I trusted my husband more than anyone in this world. Not because he was perfect, but because he never gave me a reason to doubt him. He kissed me goodbye every morning. He called when he said he would. He came home with the same calm smile I had known for years. Until one night, he didn't come home. At first, I told myself it was nothing. A late meeting, a dead phone, a simple explanation. But as the hours passed, silence became something heavier. Something dangerous. When the police got involved, they told me to stay calm. They said cases like this were usually simple. A robbery. A wrong place at the wrong time. Everyone believed that story. Everyone, except me. Because there were things they didn't know. Small details I had ignored. Secrets hiding behind a perfect marriage. And by the time the truth finally surfaced, it was already too late to turn back. My name is Emily. And if you had asked me back then what my marriage was like, I wouldn't have hesitated. I would have smiled and said one word: perfect. That's what everyone saw from the outside. A calm home, a stable relationship, a husband who seemed reliable and kind. Daniel and I lived a quiet life somewhere in the United States. Nothing extravagant. No luxury cars or dramatic parties. Just a simple house, steady routines, and the comfort of familiarity. Daniel was the kind of man people trusted without question. He spoke softly. He listened carefully. He never tried to dominate a room. At work, he was respected. Among friends, he was admired. People often told me how lucky I was to be married to him. And I believed them. We had been married for years. The intensity of early love had faded into something calmer, something that felt safe. Daniel never raised his voice at me. He never showed anger. He never gave me a reason to feel afraid. Most evenings, we ate dinner together. We talked about our days, about work stress, about ordinary plans for the future. Nothing exciting. Nothing suspicious. He would talk. I would listen. But slowly, quietly, things began to change. Not in ways that felt dangerous. Not in ways that demanded immediate attention. Just small details. Daniel started keeping his phone face down on the table. It was always on silent. Whenever a notification came in, he would glance at it quickly and lock the screen. He began coming home later than usual. Sometimes it was a meeting. Sometimes a client dinner. Sometimes an unexpected business trip. When I asked, he always had an answer. And he always smiled. "It's just work, Emily," he'd say. "You understand, right?" And I always did. Or at least I told myself I did. There's something strange about marriage. Sometimes it feels easier to protect peace than to confront the possibility of a painful truth. I told myself I was overthinking. That every marriage goes through phases. That trust means not asking too many questions. Still, there were nights when I lay awake beside him, watching his back rise and fall as he slept, and wondering if I truly knew the man next to me. He was physically there, but emotionally, he felt distant. Sometimes I caught a look in his eyes, something I couldn't explain. Not guilt. Not fear. Just something hidden. I never asked him about it, because I believed trust was the foundation of marriage. And questioning him felt like cracking that foundation. I didn't know that the perfect marriage I believed in was carefully constructed. A fragile illusion. A mask designed to hide secrets. And very soon, that mask was going to break. The night Daniel disappeared started like any other night. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt different. We had dinner together. He talked about work, about a project that was taking longer than expected. I listened, half-focused, already thinking about the next day. Before leaving, he grabbed his keys and smiled at me. "I'll be late tonight," he said. "Don't wait up." It wasn't unusual. So I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. That's the strange thing about trust. It makes silence feel normal. Hours passed. At 10:30 p.m., I sent him a text. No reply. By 11:47, I called. It rang until voicemail. At 1:12 a.m., his phone went straight to voicemail. That's when something shifted inside me. Silence stopped feeling harmless. It became heavy. Uncomfortable. I told myself to stay calm. Daniel was responsible. He would call. But morning came without a word. By sunrise, panic had replaced denial. I called his coworkers. No one had seen him. That's when I contacted the police. They asked routine questions. What was he wearing? Where was he last seen? I answered everything. My voice steady. My hands shaking. Later that day, they found his car. It was parked near an empty stretch of highway miles away from our home. The doors were unlocked. The keys were missing. Inside the car, nothing looked disturbed. No blood. No signs of struggle. No broken glass. It didn't look like an accident. The officers told me it could be a robbery. They said disappearances like this often had simple explanations. But something didn't make sense. Robberies leave chaos. This felt planned. That night, I sat alone in our house, surrounded by his things. His jacket still hung by the door. His coffee mug was still in the sink. Everything was exactly where he left it. Except him. I replayed our last conversation again and again. His smile. His voice. I wondered if I had missed something. A sign. A warning. Sleep never came. By morning, the story had already begun spreading. Friends called. Family asked questions. And the police kept digging. They didn't know it yet, but the night Daniel vanished wasn't just the beginning of a search. It was the beginning of a lie. That would change everything. The investigation began quietly. No sirens. No dramatic press conferences. Just questions. The detectives came to my house the morning after Daniel's car was found. They spoke in calm, professional tones, as if they already knew how the story would end. They asked me when I had last seen my husband, what he was wearing, whether we had argued recently. I answered everything carefully. The truth, after all, is easier to remember when it's rehearsed. They walked through our home, taking notes, opening drawers, looking at framed photographs on the walls. A happy couple, smiling faces, a perfect marriage frozen in time. They asked about Daniel's work, his friends, his habits. I told them he was predictable, routine-driven, not the type to disappear willingly. They nodded, writing things down. Then they asked about money. Did Daniel have debts? Was he under stress? Did he owe anyone? I shook my head. Daniel was careful, responsible, or at least that's what I said. The interviews continued over the next few days. Friends, co-workers, family members. Everyone said the same thing. Daniel was a good man. And I played my role perfectly. I cried at the right moments. My voice broke when I mentioned his name. I looked exhausted. Grief is convincing when you let people see just enough of it. The police focused on external suspects. A random criminal. A robbery gone wrong. A business deal that turned dangerous. They searched nearby areas. Reviewed traffic cameras. Checked cell phone records. But Daniel's phone had been turned off shortly after he vanished. No signals. No location data. A clean disappearance. Then, a new question surfaced. Life insurance. One of the detectives mentioned it casually, almost as an afterthought. Daniel had a large policy. And there was only one beneficiary. Me. I felt the room shift. For a brief moment, their eyes stayed on me longer than before. Their voices slowed. Their expressions hardened slightly. They asked if I knew about the policy. I said yes. They asked if we had discussed it recently. I said no. I told them Daniel wanted to make sure I was taken care of. That answer seemed to satisfy them, at least on the surface. But after that day, the questions changed. They asked about our marriage, about arguments, about trust. They wanted to know if Daniel had secrets. I said every marriage has private moments. Nothing more. I reminded them I was his wife, that I loved him. Eventually, the visits became less frequent. The investigation slowed. Without evidence, without a body, the case began to fade. But I could feel it. They weren't done watching me. And neither was I. Because the investigation wasn't just about finding Daniel. It was about seeing who would break first. For weeks, there were no answers. The investigation slowed, and with it, the phone calls. Detectives stopped visiting as often. Friends stopped asking questions. Life began to move forward, even though mine felt frozen. Then one morning, everything changed. A detective called and asked me to come to the station. His voice was calm, almost neutral. That was when I knew something had surfaced. They sat me down in a quiet room. No mirrors. No raised voices. Just facts. A body had been found. Burned. Unrecognizable. The remains were discovered miles away from where Daniel's car had been abandoned. There were no identifying documents. No personal belongings. At first, they couldn't be sure. Then the confirmation came through dental records. It was Daniel. I cried when they told me. The kind of crying that comes easily when you've practiced it long enough. They gave me time, tissues, sympathy, and then they explained what they believed had happened. According to the evidence, Daniel had been involved in something risky. A private meeting. A deal that went wrong. The fire, they said, was likely meant to destroy evidence. A tragic accident. Wrong place. Wrong time. The case, they told me, was close to being closed. The city accepted the explanation quickly. People prefer simple truths. They're easier to live with. But at night, alone in my house, I replayed everything. Every conversation. Every smile. Because Daniel wasn't innocent. And he wasn't honest. While sorting through his belongings, I found things I wasn't supposed to see. Messages. Photos. A second life carefully hidden behind passwords and silence. There was another woman. Plans. Promises. A future that didn't include me. I read the messages again and again. Not in anger at first. In disbelief. Then grief changed. It hardened. I realized Daniel wasn't planning to disappear by accident. He was planning to leave. The truth the police believed was only part of the story. A version designed to end questions. I attended the memorial. I accepted condolences. I played the role of a woman who had lost everything. But inside, something else had taken shape. Understanding. The investigation closed its doors. The city moved on. But I didn't. Because the truth hadn't really come out. It had only been buried. And buried truths have a way of resurfacing. Just not always the way people expect. There's a moment in every story when the truth stops pretending. For me, that moment came quietly. The police believed the case was over. Daniel was dead. The explanation made sense. And no one wanted to dig any deeper. But the truth doesn't disappear just because people stop looking. What no one knew was that Daniel hadn't vanished by chance. He hadn't walked into danger blindly. He had trusted someone. The night he disappeared, he didn't go to a meeting. He didn't meet a client. He didn't take a wrong turn. He met me. I asked him to stop near the highway. I told him I needed to talk. That it was important. He sounded irritated on the phone. But he agreed. When he arrived, I was already there. I told him I knew everything. The messages. The other woman. The plans to leave me. He didn't deny it. He laughed. Not nervously. Not apologetically. He laughed because he thought he was in control. That was his mistake. Daniel believed I was weak. That I would cry. That I would beg. He underestimated silence. And patience. What happened next wasn't an accident. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't emotional. It was calculated. The fire wasn't meant to save me. It was meant to erase him. To destroy evidence. To simplify the story. And it worked. The abandoned car. The robbery theory. The deal gone wrong. Those details didn't come from the investigation. They came from me. I gave the police a version of events they could believe. A version that required no deeper questions. Grief helped sell it. Tears helped distract them. Time did the rest. By the time the body was found, the narrative was already written. Daniel became a victim. And I became the widow. People praised my strength. My composure. They told me I was brave. What they didn't realize was that bravery had nothing to do with it. This wasn't about rage. Or revenge. It was about control. Daniel thought he was leaving behind a life he had outgrown. He never imagined I would be the one closing the door. The truth is, monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they sit quietly. They listen. They wait. And sometimes they tell their story in the softest voice of all. People still ask me how I survived it all. How I managed to move on so calmly. I always give them the same answer. Time heals everything. That's what they want to hear. What they don't understand is that nothing was taken from me. Nothing was stolen. Everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Daniel thought he was walking away from his old life. He thought I would be left behind, broken and confused. But he never realized one thing. I was listening the whole time. Watching. Learning. The police close the case because they believe the truth. Just not the whole truth. Because the most dangerous lies aren't spoken loudly. They're whispered. And monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes, they sound gentle. They cry at the right moments. They tell their story softly. Just like I did. Trust is the most dangerous weapon. And I knew exactly how to use it. If you think the truth always comes out, subscribe. Because some secrets are buried too deep.